Welcome to the Policy Fellows informational session. Thank you for being here and for your interest in the program. My name is Sara Benzkofer. I'm the Executive Director of the Policy Fellows program, and I also lead a number of other engagement efforts here at the Center for the Study of Politics and Governance at the Humphrey School. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. My career has centered on public policy, advocacy, and civic engagement. I've been legislative staff in both Minnesota House and Senate, and most recently was executive director of an organization that supported early childhood and school age care educators, and where I led a very similar fellowship. I love working in partnership with others to think about solutions to our most pressing issues and create positive change in our communities. So it's great to be a part of this program. Next, I'll have my colleague Cody say hello.
Hi everyone, I'm Cody. I'm the project and program specialist for the Humphrey School's Center for the Study of Politics and Governance. I hope all of you learn a lot during this webinar and apply for the Policy Fellows program. I've been only with the Humphrey School for about 3.5 months, but I've seen a lot of really amazing people come through the program, and I think that it's a great opportunity to really grow your skills.
Thank you. I'm also very pleased that 2 Policy Fellow alumni are joining us to share their experiences and advice. Brian, do you want to go first? Introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Brian Strauser. I do a couple things. I'm a principal and chief executive of a consulting firm called BrightPath based here in Shoreview, Minnesota. I was a policy fellow in the 2016 to 2017 academic year. I'm also chairman of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. And prior to doing those things, I spent 21 years at Target Corporation. And Amira.
Yes, thank you, Amira.
Thank you, Brian and Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Amira Adawi. I am the executive director of the Beautywell project. It's a nonprofit that's based in Minnesota that's working towards addressing colorism, skin lighting practices, and chemical exposures in communities of color. My background is in public health. I worked in both government and also now in nonprofit. So prior to my nonprofit career, I worked for Governor Mark Dayton's administration, leading the children's cabinet for the governor. Prior to that, I worked at the state health department and also Ramsey County public health. And I was a policy fellow 2015-2016 cohort.
Great, thank you. So before we get started, a few logistical items. Please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. We'll try to get through as many as possible. This webinar will also be recorded and available on our website, and we'll email it out to all of you as well. Also, I'll put in the chat the website that I'll be referencing quite a bit. And so if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, that would be a useful place to go. So today's agenda will be touching on the many aspects of the program and the application process. We'll take questions during each section, and Brian and Amira will share their reflections too. The Policy Fellows program is a great opportunity, but it's also a big commitment. There are a number of other leadership programs, master's programs, certificates, etc. And our hope is that this webinar will help you discern if this fellowship is right for you at this time. This has been a very difficult couple of years for so many reasons, and many of you have likely been thinking about the many issues we've been faced with. Last year, we continued the program virtually, and this year we've been mostly in person. We think it's critically important to continue creating space for people to lean into each other, lean into bipartisanship, lean into working across difference. So moving into what the Policy Fellows program is. So it's an engaging and intensive bipartisan learning experience for Minnesota leaders working in government, nonprofits, business, and the military. And bipartisanship is the key word there. It is a core value of the program since its inception 32 years ago. And that was due to Vice President Mondale, who founded this program in partnership with Ambassador Jerry Joseph. Mr. Mondale died a year ago, and he will be greatly missed. He continued to have huge influence on the program even after he was no longer the director. His legacy lives on in this program and all the alumni who have participated, who believe deeply in the importance of working across difference. After about 4 or 5 Mondale years, the program was then run for a dozen or so years by former Congressman Tim Penny and Vin Weber. And for the last 17 years, Professor Larry Jacobs has led the program. So the program is a cohort experience. You learn from and with others in the program. It's also an opportunity to build your own leadership skills and awareness and capacity, and how your work and your community fits into this broader systems at play, which is where the public policy and politics come in. You also have access to those who hold influential positions in Minnesota and DC, and who are making decisions that impact our everyday lives. The fellows in the program are living and working in Minnesota. Another core value and something that sets this program apart from other leadership programs is the focus on bringing people together across sectors. So like I mentioned, we are very intentional about having people from nonprofits, business, government, education, and the military. There are typically 30 to 35 fellows in each cohort, and it's very intentionally diverse across many metrics. So I spoke about the sector, but we're also looking at political, geographic, metro, greater Minnesota, race, ethnicity, personal background, age, and experience level. We talk about this being a mid-career opportunity, and that translates to fellows who are in their late 20s to fellows that are mid-50s, and most are in their 30s and 40s, but it's really a broad range, and we welcome these varied experiences. All of this makes for a much richer experience for everyone. We're looking for people who want to learn and grow, but who also want to contribute, those who are open and curious and who ask questions. We're not asking you to abandon your beliefs, but seek to understand others and thereby better understand your own beliefs too. We also have an active alumni network. So we are closing in on 1,000 alumni, which is really exciting. There's an alumni board who plans events, who fundraise for scholarship support, who participate in webinars like this, and who help with group projects, which we'll talk about in a bit too. So with that, I'd love to turn over to Brian and Amira. Amira, what can you share about your thoughts on the cohort experience or reasons why you chose to do the fellowship?
Thank you, Sarah. So the reason I choose the fellowship, it's exactly what Sarah said about gaining all of these skills that you have listed. So at the time I was working in Ramsey County Public Health, and so I wanted to go into work in upstream public health, which is on a policy and advocacy level, more of an upstream, state level, federal level. And so I applied the program, and I was able to actually learn all of these skills. And that during the program actually is when I moved to working in the state. And so my role at the time was legislative liaison at the Department of Health. And so being between the legislatures and also at the department. And so going through the program was extremely helpful for me because I could directly apply to my work what I'm learning from the program. It wasn't only policy skills, but also leadership skills, and all of the networks that I was getting into, people that I was meeting within my cohort who either worked in the state with me, or also were lobbyists that were working with other entities that I could meet with them on a daily basis. And so not only it increased my skills of public policy, but also a leadership, and then also getting into this network of people who support each other, and also people who have different political views. I was meeting people that have, like totally different political views, cultural and also background. I'm originally from East Africa, Somalia, and I lived in the US close to 22 years. And so I have different background than other people who were in the program with me. So getting to know them and actually appreciating and learning from that difference was something that was extremely helpful for me. So I could say it was a comprehensive learning experience for me to go through the program, and it was something that I could directly apply to my work.
Great, thank you. Brian.
So I was in, pardon me, I was in the program during the 2016 election year. So it was a pretty fascinating time to be in a politically diverse conversation in Minnesota about all of the impacts that we saw coming out of that election, both before the election and then the immediate aftermath, and then the Trump administration coming in January 2017, post-inaugural. So it was a pretty fascinating time to be in DC and to be involved in this program. What drew me to the Policy Fellows program was the opportunity to have a better understanding of how to make policy, about how to influence that as more of a political outsider in my case, and how to do that in as much of a collaborative way as possible. I came at this as a conservative and I think I was the only openly conservative member of my cohort. Most of the cohort was more politically to the left. And it made for some pretty fascinating conversations because I think we all shattered each other's perceptions of what the other side, if you want to think of it in that way, how we thought, how we approached policy, the level of thoughtfulness we put into those conversations, and being able to do that in a really turbulent political era of what that 2016 election looked like. I gained a ton of what I think are lifelong friends out of that cohort and the shared experience that we had, and overall found it to be a very positive experience, both in terms of helping me be better at policy in formulation and influence of that, and being able to work with a diverse group of individuals to achieve those goals.
Great, thank you both. So any questions in this section? Cody?
We've had one question come in so far. If you have any questions, please make sure to enter them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. The question we had today was, when it comes to building a diverse cohort, how do we identify an applicant's political stance or ideology?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's usually just self-identified, either through the essays or the work that you're doing. So we would know it through that.
We had another question come in. Is it frowned upon if you apply but already have some policy experience?
No, not at all. We definitely have fellows who are working in and around different levels of government. And so this is an opportunity for you to sort of hone in those skills and to build that network that both Brian and Amira talked about. I don't know if either of Brian and Amira want to say more about that part.
Sarah, that's a great point, because in my cohort, there were already people who are working in a policy world, both in state or county level, and directly doing policy work. And the first 6 months I worked in the county, and then when I moved to the state, the last 6 months of the program, I was working in the state doing policy work. So yes, there are a lot of people who are doing policy work that are or even have a strong knowledge in policy work that are in the program, but also the program offers leadership skills and the network. And also that connection is extremely important for anybody who wants to transform their leadership skills.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Another question came in. Are international students allowed to apply who are recent graduates?
So if you're living and working in Minnesota, you can apply. So
And if we have more than 30 to 35 applicants, how do we determine who gets in?
So we'll get to that. So, and if I don't cover it, please feel free to put in another question. So next we'll talk about the program components and expectations. So we meet monthly on Fridays for full day sessions. The dates are listed again on the website that I put in the chat, and I can put it in again if people have come in since I did that before. So the other programs meet intensively for a week or so, but we meet monthly over a 9-month period intentionally, so we can build those relationships that both Brian and Amira have talked about, and which is such an important aspect of this program. There's also a sample curriculum on the website, so I encourage you to take a look at that to get more detail about the different types of sessions. But overall, each session has a skill building workshop like conflict fluency, persuasive communications, stakeholder engagement, how to be an effective advocate, where we bring in a guest facilitator and we dig deep on that particular topic. And then we often have a panel of guest speakers who are applying this topic in their work, and or it's on a topic of particular interest at that moment in time. And there's also time during the sessions to work on your projects. So the group projects are also an integral piece of the curriculum. The projects are imagined and developed by the fellows. We start in October with brainstorming ideas that are of interest. And then a few months later, after those conversations have continued and all of the ideas are shared, the fellows decide which projects to move forward with in teams of like 4 to 7 people or so. Projects are wide ranging, from raising awareness for issues that haven't gotten a lot of attention to projects that are being discussed at the Minnesota Capitol. As the fellows dig deeper, they may find they want to pivot their project. So what you decide on in November, December isn't set in stone. It's also an opportunity to build strong relationships with those that are working on the project together and with other community members that you'll reach out to as resources. So Brian, do you want to share what your project was, or a project that you remember from your year?
Sure. So my project was on probation reform here in Minnesota. At the time, this has changed since then, but at the time, Minnesota was really an outlier in most states in that we allowed for almost indeterminate probation sentences. And there were pretty wide disparities of who received probation versus prison and what type of probation they received across the different judicial districts in Minnesota. And they broke down along geographic, political, and racial and socioeconomic lines. This was a raging debate in the Minnesota legislature in 2014, 15, 16, 17. I think this got resolved in 2018, if I remember right. But it was pretty interesting project. My project team was very much across the political spectrum, and we covered everything from my work from a communications and crisis management standpoint to we had a defense attorney on our team, and we had some folks that had worked in various policy roles for campaigns and state government. So our output was a pretty detailed report and analysis of what this looked like in Minnesota. And then we were able to meet with both DFL and Republican leaders that shared the public safety and judiciary committees in both bodies to kind of present that research and have that help inform the legislation that they were working on both sides of the aisle.
Great. Amira, do you want to share your project or one that resonated with you?
Sure, yeah. So our group project was about Promised Neighborhood. That was the first time that it was federally designated for City of Minneapolis. And so we worked with, at the time, City of Minneapolis city coordinator. And so that's what we did. So we did analysis on like needs-based analysis and how Promised Neighborhood initiative will work for certain neighborhoods in Minneapolis, focusing on North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis, where we have large immigrant communities and also African-American communities. And so yeah, so we worked with closely city of Minneapolis.
Great, thank you. So this year's cohort was mostly in person. We had one virtual session in January because of Omicron, but we're very hopeful that we'll be able to be in person this fall. But as we all know, after being in a pandemic for 2 years, things can change quickly. So just please be prepared for all eventualities. If we're in person, the sessions are held in the Twin Cities at the Humphrey, but pre-COVID, also at different locations around the cities. So it gave the fellows an opportunity to be in touch with organizations and businesses that are doing good work in the community. And so we're hopeful we'll be able to start doing that again this fall too. 1 month we're at the state capitol, where we meet with Minnesota Supreme Court justices, House and Senate leaders, lobbyists, media, and then you have the opportunity to set up meetings with the legislators that represent you and have a meeting with them. We also have a 4-day study trip to DC, which is a highlight of the program, where we meet with a variety of people working in the public space of Washington. So legislators, White House staff, the Pentagon, lobbyists, media, etc. We just returned from the DC trip, which we finally took in early due to COVID. So that was really great. We took last year's cohort and this year's cohort, and we met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Pentagon Undersecretary Colin Kahl, Senator Klobuchar, Congressman Emmer, and many others. So that's a really amazing experience. In terms of expectations, as I said before, this is a cohort experience. So we expect that you'll be present at each session, that you'll be interested in listening and learning, that you'll strive to be effective, not right, in quotes, and that you'll get out of your echo chamber and connect across difference. Also, like many things, you get out what you put in. So we expect you to prioritize this experience and take advantage of all the opportunities that the program offers. So Mira, do you have a favorite session or a favorite speaker or topic that you remember?
Yeah, so my favorite part was the trip to DC altogether. That was actually the moment that I learned more, but also getting to know my cohort members more, because you will stay together every single day and more time spending with each other. And the sessions and the people that that I was able to meet, if it wasn't this program, I don't think so that I would have had that chance and opportunity to meet these individuals. So I think both the connections, but also the learning experience when we were in DC. Also, the other sessions that I learned a lot was the state capitol, where the legislatures came and did a real life experience about how they do their work and everything. So that was actually really great. And then also the the part that the leadership development part of one of the speakers that came and talked about different healing processes and an emotional intelligent session as you lead. How do you make sure that you have strong emotional intelligence to lead in different spaces? So I think that was something that was really important, and I learned a lot from that session as well.
Great. Brian, did you have a favorite session or speaker?
I think any of actually, we did a session once where we had, I can't remember what, you may still do this, but we took a particular survey about thinking styles and had a speaker really kind of walk through how we think and validate information differently and how that helps us reach certain decisions around everything from policy to other personal preferences, how we react to news and things along those lines. I found that to be particularly interesting because I went into that thinking well, I made my decisions based on logic and, this, that, and the other thing. And, it really helped me uncover some different biases in my thinking in that thought process. So I found that to be a pretty interesting session. But honestly, most of the sessions were pretty interesting just in terms of the discussion that we had as a class, or as a cohort rather, in response to the inputs we received from the various speakers.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions in this section, Cody?
Can we talk a little bit more about the full day sessions on Fridays, who leads them, and what are some examples of the topics that we go over other than the ones that Brian and Amira just mentioned?
Sure, so I would direct you to the website where there's a sample curriculum that sort of goes into a deeper dive into each of the different topics. In terms of who we invite, it varies sort of year to year, depending on what, issues might be happening. But in terms of like the facilitators, we're often, working with people that we know from the University of Minnesota, or other community organizations that, know something about effective communications. This year Thunheim is coming to talk about communications. So they're often, people from outside groups that are coming in to facilitate. So hopefully that answers your question, but let us know if you have more on that. Any other?
Is there a certificate given after completion of the program?
So there is a certificate given. This is a non-degree program, but we do give a certificate at the end. Yes.
And this is a good question. For the full day sessions, is there any pre-reading or pre-work required? And if so, what's the estimated time investment for the work?
So yes, there is often prep work. And I would say it was probably be about an hour or so in readings and or videos that we might want you to watch. I don't know, Brian or Amir, if you wanted to talk about how those prep readings, like if it felt like an okay amount, or how you
I'd echo that. I think it was no more than an hour or two a month in prep work, if that. It really just depends on what the session is about and who the speakers are.
Right. Yeah, it will vary. Some months there isn't any, and some months there, like for DC, Professor Jacobs creates quite a list of prep readings that you're welcome to look at, but most often it's, more limited. Did you have anything to add to that, Amira, or?
Yeah, same. It was not more than an hour of reading, and these are really interesting readings or videos as well.
Yeah. Other questions for this section?
In the group projects, are the clients predetermined, or do groups need to find their own clients or subjects?
I'm not really sure what you mean by clients. So people will determine what the topic is, and then we often encourage the fellows to find community partners that are working on that particular issue, and to engage with them to see how you might be helpful to them, because it's likely that the issue is being worked on in the community. And so we encourage those interactions. Let me know again if I didn't quite answer that.
And then I think this is a good question to wrap up the curriculum section. How are past participants applying what they learned in the program in their lives now?
Yeah, so they've both touched on that a little bit, but Brian or Amira, do you have thoughts about how you're using the content?
I was applying to what I was learning when I was in the program, and to this date. So now the nonprofit organization that I run, we do both state and federal advocacy, and we use, I use all of the skills that I gained from the program, and also the connections. I'm still connected to some of my cohort members. Some of them actually, when I was transitioning to the nonprofit world, they had more stronger experience in nonprofit, and so they have, they were coaching me, and some of them are still coaching me. So whether it's the network or the actual skills, it's something that you can apply to your work, even if it's like after several years.
Yeah, I think similarly to that, I think that one of the most valuable things I've taken away from the program has been the network of folks from within my cohort and others that we interacted with in terms of speakers and others that were presenting to our cohort through the program. That's enabled me to have a broader base to bounce ideas off of, to work together on some things outside of or even past the program as I've done. That's really, I think, has helped me advance policies and other political objectives that we have in our nonprofit organization to move those things forward.
Great. You take maybe one more question.
Let's go with this one. And if we have time at the end, we get to the others. If we're already part of a community organization working on issues, can we develop a group project around that work?
For sure. It's something that obviously the cohort, creates these projects together. So we sort of have a bunch of project ideas that we winnow down to a smaller number. And so if you're really interested in something that you're working on in your work, you should absolutely put that out as a possible project, and then see what your other fellows will say about it. Okay. So next up, I want to talk about the application process. So in terms of very basic information, you want to visit the website again that I have in the chat to download the application form in a Microsoft Word. You'll prepare the application form, an essay, and a Word document. Then you'll go to the online platform, which is also linked at the site, and enter basic information and upload your Word doc, or you can change it into a PDF. As we talked about, we're wanting to build a diverse cohort. So we want to hear about how you got to where you are today. If you want to talk about your work, share what that looks like beyond the job title, be sure to explain what you're involved in, either in your work or you're in your community. I'd avoid acronyms as much as possible. We're also interested in, what is challenging for you? What are you struggling with? What are you thinking about, and how this program will help you in these challenges to grow and learn? So showing self-awareness, self-reflection on where you are right now and how this program will be a good fit is helpful information to share. We also ask for 2 recommendation letters. So they can be people from your work, from your community. It could be a previous fellow. We'd like it to be a current recommendation, someone who will speak to your involvement in this program specifically. And we encourage you to, vary who you're getting your letters from. So not both from work, for example. We encourage you to choose people who can speak to where you are in your leadership journey now and how this program will help you in building your capacity. So you can either get the recommendation letter and include it in the application, or they can email it to us at cspg@umn.edu. And that info is also on the website. It is important that the recommendations are included with your application, or that they're emailed to us by the deadline. If they aren't, your application will not be considered. So we typically have twice as many applicants as we can accept. And so the selection committee has very tough decisions to make. The selection committee is made up of alumni, and they dig into each application, and they are looking for people who are at an inflection point in their career, and they're in their life where they've had some experiences, but are eager for more growth. And they want to contribute and learn how they can have a greater impact. But again, like I said, we're also looking to build a diverse cohort. So, they're taking into account a number of different factors. So Amira, do you have recommendations for how to complete the application? How did you approach it?
Yeah, so I think one of the recommendations that I would like to share is that just be authentic, just be who you are, and make sure that you write a clear essay. I think that's the one of the most important thing, because that is where you can write your experience, your community experience. And when I say community experience, any work that you have done in communities, whether it's volunteering or work within communities, and so just write that and share, whether it's within Minnesota, outside Minnesota, even other countries. And so just share that, because that is where whoever is reviewing the application can learn more about the person. Yes, the resume is really great and important, and listing all of your work experiences, but the personal essay is where you can express most of who you are, and just be as real as you can be, and just being authentic of who you are.
Yeah, that's great advice. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
If I have anything much to add to that, I think Amira really hit the key points. I would encourage you to just be straightforward and show as much as your authentic self in your essay and application as you can. That, I think, is the best way to stand out as being the unique individual that you are.
Yeah, great. Any questions?
Yep, we had a couple of questions. Do you like to see suggestions of the group projects in the applications?
No, that's not necessary. Since it's pretty much a group decision that you all make together, you wouldn't have to put that in the application.
If you've applied in the past but were not selected, is that information that you should disclose in your application?
You wouldn't have to, but I guess I would encourage it. We often, again, as I said, it's if you aren't accepted, it's not because we didn't think you were a good candidate. Most likely it's because the selection committee is really having to take into account all these different factors. And so if it didn't work out one year, letting us know that you applied in it before actually might help raise your visibility for the committee too. Any other ones? Okay. So next up then is the program cost and scholarships. So the program fee is $9,000. This covers each of the 9 sessions, the trip to DC, including hotel and airfare and meals. It covers the speakers, facilitators, staffing, food, everything that makes this program happen. It's funded by employer and individual participant support, but also grants from several foundations and businesses, as well as program alumni giving. We do not receive direct U of M funding or go through U of M financial aid. The selection process is need blind, so we strongly recommend that you apply if you're interested in the program, and to not worry about the program fee at this time, because we will work with every participant to build a package that works for you. You'll be accepted before we know what your financial situation is. So with that said, if you are accepted, we will be strongly encouraging you to seek as much employer support as you can. And we provide resources to help you make that pitch if you need it. We also know that many organizations are experiencing challenging financial times right now. So we'll take that into account too, if that's your situation. We will also ask that you as individuals make every effort to contribute at a level that is reasonable for you too. And then once those conversations have taken place, we can talk about scholarship support if needed. Again, we do not want the fee to be a barrier, so please apply and we will work together to find a combination of funding that works for you. If you're from Greater Minnesota, we will cover the cost of a hotel the night before each session, as well as the night before and after the DC trip, since we fly out of the Twin Cities. Are there any questions on the fee or the scholarships?
We had a question going back to the application that came in. Should we submit a cover letter with the application materials?
No, so the essays sort of cover what you might cover in a cover letter, I guess is what I would say. Anything else?
We don't have any questions about the program fee yet, but if anyone has any, make sure to put them in the chat or in the Q&A.
So we're just about to close. So if there are other, we can just take other random questions now too. If there are any.
Another question that was in here is, do you see people using this program as a way of making a career pivot?
Yes, for sure. There are a number of people that come into the fellowship and sort of their perspectives are broadened and they realize that there are a number of other opportunities that would be interesting to them. So we do see that quite often. I don't know if that happened to either of you, Brian or Amira, but.
Not me.
Okay.
Yeah, as I was saying, I changed jobs when I was doing the program, when I was in the program, and that was also helpful as I was planning prior to joining the program to go more upstream public health on a policy level. But I had several cohort members who actually changed career after the fellowship.
Great. Thank you. Other question?
And Sarah, we did touch on this, but if you could just go over it briefly again. Is DC travel included in the program fees?
It is, yes.
Okay. So if somebody is 60 years old, should they still apply?
Yes, definitely.
And can you have more than 2 recommendation letters?
You certainly could, but not necessary. It wouldn't necessarily, make your application better.
Are fellows eligible for the U of M Regent Scholarship for U of M employees?
Sorry, I didn't.
Are fellows eligible for the U of M Regent Scholarship, which applies to U of M employees?
I don't think so, but I can look into that. Yeah. If you wanted to email us at cspg@umn.edu, I could give you a more firm answer after looking into it.
Do certificates help for master's degrees?
Are you asking if being in this program would help? If you're asking if being in this program would help to apply for a master's program, I would imagine it would. The program is a very prestigious and well-known program that I think would be helpful on any resume for a lot of different purposes. So just to close, I just wanted to read these 2 quotes. So from previous participants. So the Fellows Program ignited a passion and a fire for community involvement and service, as well as a strong desire to serve in state government at some point in my life. Being in Greater Minnesota can make programs like this a bit harder to find. Thank you for having resources available to make that easier. And then the other one is extraordinary insight on policy and how to influence the agenda for the greater good. Great networking and strong lasting friendships with people I might not have otherwise met. Exposure to thought leaders, educators, and politicians of all stripes to expand my own knowledge and challenge my thinking. A life-changing experience. So Brian and Amira, any last thoughts or advice we haven't gotten to?
I think Sarah, you covered everything. Just think about if you really want to apply this program and have that commitment time, because that's also very important. And then also focusing on the application process. So I think it's a really great program. And I just want to mention that whether you have a degree or like have high school diploma, I think you can still apply this program, because there are some people that don't have a college degree, but they are leaders in their communities and they do really great work. And that is very important for them to get this kind of opportunity and learn and be in these kind of spaces. So anyone can be part of this program as long as they're ready for.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point. There's no educational prerequisite. Sure. Ryan, any last?
Yeah, I would just echo what my colleague said. I think if this is something you're really interested in, I would highly encourage you to apply. I think there's a lot of value to be gained from participating in the program and giving it your best. It's a great place to learn how to collaborate and interact and debate and discuss policy with those who may not always agree with your point of view. And whatever your background or experience or education or upbringing or political beliefs are, that experience is valid. And I think bringing that to the table will make this a more interesting and valuable cohort for everyone that participates. So I would encourage you to apply.
Wonderful. Thank you for those final words. So just a reminder that applications are due Wednesday, June 1st by midnight. The recording will be available on our website and we'll email it out. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, cspg@umn.edu. Thank you, Brian and Amira, for joining us, and for Cody, for all that you do. And we look forward to getting your applications. Have a great day.